Ever wondered how a nation can be born from division, struggle, and ultimately hope? That's the story of South Africa, a country at the very tip of the African continent. Often called the Rainbow Nation, its history is a powerful, complex, and deeply human saga. From ancient peoples to a modern democracy, let's journey through the defining moments that shaped South Africa. Our story begins tens of thousands of years ago, with the original inhabitants of this land, the San hunter-gatherers and the Khoi pastoralists. They lived in harmony with the rich landscapes, leaving behind stunning rock art that we can still see today, a beautiful window into their ancient world. Around 2,000 years ago, Bantu-speaking peoples migrated from the north, bringing with them advanced farming techniques and ironworking skills. They established complex societies and kingdoms, like the famous Kingdom of Mapungu, which was a major trading power in southern Africa long before Europeans arrived. These diverse groups formed the deep-rooted foundation of the region's population. Then in 1488, everything began to change. Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope, opening a new sea route between Europe and Asia. But it wasn't until 1652 that a permanent European settlement was established. The Dutch East India Company set up a small refreshment station at what is now Cape Town, intended to supply ships on their long voyages. This small outpost, led by Jan van Riebeeck, was never meant to be a full-blown colony, but it quickly grew. Dutch settlers, known as Boers or Afrikaners, began to move further inland, seeking land for farming. This expansion led to inevitable and often violent conflicts with the indigenous Khoisan and Xhosa peoples, who were pushed off their ancestral lands. The colony also began importing enslaved people from other parts of Africa and Asia, creating a deeply stratified and unequal society from its very inception. By the early 1800s, another major power entered the scene: the British. They took control of the Cape Colony, and their rule brought significant changes, including the official abolition of slavery in 1834. While this was a monumental step, it created new tensions. Many Afrikaners, resentful of British rule and policies, decided to leave the Cape Colony in a mass migration known as the Great Trek. They journeyed into the interior of South Africa, determined to establish their own independent republics, free from British control. This trek led to the formation of the Boer republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal Republic. But this expansion wasn't into empty land. It led to intense and bloody conflicts with powerful African kingdoms, most notably the Zulu kingdom. Under the leadership of figures like Shaka Zulu, the Zulus had built a formidable military empire. The famous Battle of Blood River in 1838 is a stark reminder of the violent clashes that defined this era of expansion. The discovery of diamonds in Kimberley in 1867 and then gold in the Transvaal in 1886 changed everything once again. This was a game changer. Suddenly, South Africa was not just a strategic outpost, but one of the world's most valuable pieces of real estate. Fortune seekers from all over the globe flocked to the region. The British, eager to control this immense wealth, intensified their imperial ambitions. This clash of interests between the British Empire and the independent Boer republics eventually exploded into war. The Anglo-Boer Wars, particularly the Second War from 1899 to 1902, were brutal. The British used scorched earth tactics and established concentration camps where thousands of Boer women and children, as well as black Africans, died from disease and malnutrition. It was a deeply traumatic conflict that left lasting scars. In the end, the British were victorious, and in 1910, the four separate colonies were brought together to form the Union of South Africa, a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. But this new union was built on a foundation of exclusion. While it granted power to the white minority, both British and Afrikaner, it systematically denied political rights to the black majority. This was formalized through a series of discriminatory laws. The 1930 Natives Land Act was particularly devastating, restricting black land ownership to just 7% of the country, forcing millions into poverty and a life of cheap labor for white-owned farms and mines. In response to this growing injustice, the South African Native National Congress was formed in 1912, which would later become the African National Congress, or ANC. This organization was created to fight for the rights and freedoms of black South Africans. For decades, they pursued nonviolent protests, petitions, and legal challenges, but their pleas for equality were largely ignored by the white government. The situation took a turn for the worse in 1948. The Afrikaner-dominated National Party came to power with a single chilling policy: apartheid. This wasn't just segregation. It was a systematic, institutionalized system of racial domination. The word apartheid literally means apartness. The entire population was classified by race: white, colored, Indian, and black. Every aspect of life was segregated: where you could live, go to school, work, and even who you could marry. Black South Africans were stripped of their citizenship and treated as foreigners in their own country. The struggle against apartheid intensified. The ANC, along with other groups like the Pan-Africanist Congress, led massive campaigns of civil disobedience. The 1960 Sharpeville massacre, where police opened fire on peaceful protesters, killing 69 people, was a turning point. It showed the world the brutal reality of the apartheid regime. In the aftermath, the government banned the ANC and other liberation movements, forcing them to go underground and adopt armed struggle. Leaders of the movement, including the charismatic lawyer Nelson Mandela, were arrested. In 1964, Mandela and several other ANC leaders were sentenced to life in prison during the infamous Rivonia trial. From his cell on Robben Island, Mandela became a global symbol of resistance against oppression. The international community began to take notice. The United Nations condemned apartheid, and a powerful anti-apartheid movement grew around the world, calling for boycotts, sanctions, and divestment from South Africa. Inside the country, the resistance continued, fueled by a new generation of activists. The Soweto Uprising of 1976, where thousands of black students protested against being forced to learn in Afrikaans, was met with brutal police violence, and the image of a dying student, Hector Peterson, shocked the world. By the late 1980s, South Africa was in a state of crisis. The country was isolated internationally. Its economy was struggling under sanctions, and internal resistance was making the country ungovernable. The apartheid government under President F.W. de Klerk finally realized that change was inevitable. In a stunning speech on February 2, 1990, de Klerk announced the unbanning of the ANC and other political organizations. Just a few days later, on February 11th, Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 long years. The world watched, captivated, as he walked to freedom. What followed was a period of intense and difficult negotiations between the government, the ANC, and other political parties. It was a tense time, filled with violence and uncertainty, but guided by the leadership of Mandela and de Klerk, they managed to navigate a path towards a new democratic South Africa. In 1994, history was made. South Africa held its first ever democratic election in which all citizens, regardless of race, could vote. Long lines of people snaked for miles, waiting patiently to cast their ballot for the first time in their lives. It was a moment of incredible joy and hope. The ANC won a landslide victory, and Nelson Mandela became the first president of a free and democratic South Africa. Mandela's presidency focused on reconciliation and nation-building. He established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It was a unique process where victims of human rights abuses could tell their stories and perpetrators could apply for amnesty if they made a full confession. It was a painful but necessary step towards healing the deep wounds of the past. Today, South Africa is still a young democracy, grappling with the enduring legacies of apartheid, including immense inequality, poverty, and crime. But it is also a nation of incredible resilience, diversity, and spirit. The journey from ancient kingdoms to a divided colony, from the darkness of apartheid to the hope of the Rainbow Nation, is a powerful testament to the human struggle for freedom and justice. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through South Africa's history. It's a story that continues to unfold. If you found this interesting, please like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.